Well, I guess it was only a matter of time. The lever went ahead and broke on my Aquila 3D printer. It's only a matter of time though. I've seen this as a super common problem. Lots of questions about it. Lots on Facebook groups, lots on Reddit. You know, I follow along, I see those things. I knew this was going to happen at some point. So I went ahead and printed my own version that's up live on Thingiverse. I've had the same setup for 2 years on my Ender and over a year on my custom printer. So it's time to add it to the Aquila and avoid this problem altogether. Maybe I can save you guys some money. I'm gonna pull the printer out, put it up top, take it apart, put it back together, let you know how it does. See you there. Okay everybody, first things first, get yourself a towel or something soft to put on the bed. When you're working on your printer, you don't want anything falling on the bed. Specifically, if we're going to be taking off this motor, it has a chance to drop down and crack your glass bed, so cover that up. You're going to need a couple things for this setup. First, let's go over the printed pieces. Printed pieces is my adjustable lever. We have a nut. We have a spring perch. And the actual block itself, which is modeled after the stock block that's on the Creality machines, and this is just a clone of it. However, its a special part on the front here is these threads that are in a cone shape, and when you put in this nut with a cone shape on it, it squeezes the PTFE tube. And the point of this is that these PTFE tube fittings fail all the time. One way you can check yours is when your printer is going and has retractions. Put your fingers right here on the front, and I bet you'll feel this thing moving in and out of it, eventually loosening, eventually popping out, causing lots of failures, but also messing up your retractions and getting you lousy prints. So this holds it on tightly, and no more need to buy any more fittings, any more extruders. So let's take the spring off here. So other than the printed pieces, you're going to need a couple pieces of hardware. So first, you're going to need an M4 by 10. You're going to need an M4 by 16. You're going to need a M3 by 16 and an M4 nut. And let me show you why. So this M4 by 10 is going to be your new way of holding the bearing in the lever. So you want it to be long enough to go through the bottom piece, but not all the way through grinding the top. And let me show you side by side. The beauty of the lever is that it has two ways to hold the bearing from top and bottom, which makes it much stronger, especially if you print this at 100%. The other benefit of this lever, although this particular block does have an adjustment for the spring, is combined with the spring perch like this, you can drop in a nut, an M4 nut right to there, take your M4 by 16 piece of hardware, screw it in from the back like this, just so it's coming out of the other end a little bit. And that's where your spring perch is going to go, like this, so that you can easily adjust the tension on the spring, as you can see here. So we'll go ahead and leave that all the way out for now for the install. Alright, and then the M3 by 16 is what you're going to use on the pivot to to install the actual lever down on the extruder like this. And you could just print the lever if that's all you really need and you want to hold on to your existing system, that's fine. But we're going to be installing the whole kit today. Alright, so I'm going to just set that down for a second. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bearing off of the stock lever. And this thing's really cracked and broken. Basically what ends up happening is with a little bit too much tension from the factory, they seem to just snap. Like I said before, I see this happen very often. And it did happen on my Creality machine too. That's why I had this in the first place. And I've had it for a very, very long time on that machine, a little over 2 years. So I just took that bearing out, as you saw, and I'm going to slide it right in there. Like that. Let's take our Allen key. And this M4 by 10 should thread right into the plastic. It's not really holding anything down, but it is holding the bearing from moving. So if we look on this side, after we have it threaded on the top, it should start to thread into the bottom. Here we go, I can feel the tension now. And we don't want this to be overly tight, but just enough. There we go. So now you can see that this bolt is all the way through both the sides. The bearing spins nice and free, and this is what's going to give us our strength back in our lever, instead of having just this tiny little thin piece. Alright, so next, since this is now assembled and ready, let me just drop in this M3 bolt. There you go, just so I don't forget. Let's set that aside. Alright, now let's go ahead and take this off. Oh, another thing worth noting is this block is the same height as the stock block, so no need to adjust this gear, although it is a good opportunity to make sure that this gear is tight on your extruder. So let's go ahead and take our Allen keys, oh, that's too big, and start undoing the hardware here. One thing to note is on this side right over here, where underneath the lever, there is a countersunk Allen key that's different than the others, and the new block also has a countersunk side. That is going to be the only one that fits. The rest should use the stock hardware. And as we take this off, right now there's 2 missing. I'm taking off the third, so the extruder motor will still be held. But note that when you undo the last bolt here holding on the motor, you will drop the extruder, and that's another good reason for the towel. Looks like this bolt you can't reach because the tensioner is kind of in the way, so we do have to put the tension all the way in. Yep, there we go. Now that's going to be out of our way. Let's see. I wonder what the size of the screw is. Maybe this is something you could reuse. Yeah, this looks like an M3 or an M4 by 10. So this is actually the perfect piece of hardware to use to hold your bearing right here. So there you go. One less piece of hardware. That's good news. And here we go. Now we have this coming off, and I'm holding, as you notice, I'm holding the motor here. Okay, there we go. It's loose. I can set it right on that towel. Okay, looks like I will have to take this all the way out to remove and reuse that bolt. So let's go ahead and do that. And you know what? I'll swap that one in to our lever, just so that all the hardware is black. Hopefully it's 10. It might be 12. At which point you can put a washer underneath. Let's see. Okay, that's free now. And let's see what this bolt is. Oh yeah, it's actually by 12. So it would need 2 washers underneath. So scratch that. Keep your 10. Alright, now, as far as this block goes, there's a couple things to mention. One of the other huge benefits of this block is this piece right here. And what this does is it gets your PTFE tube basically almost touching the gear and the bearing. And when that happens, it lets you print flexible materials on your boat and setup. As you can tell here, there is a gap between, and a lot of times what will happen is the filament, the soft filament, will bunch up and come out of your extruder right there at the tip, whereas here there's no place to go, so your flexibles will be printed. So we're gonna have to go ahead and take off this little clip, push on the retaining clip here and pull out the PTFE tube. Inspect it, make sure it's not damaged. And when you go ahead and put it in here, you're going to feel some resistance. It's going to pretty much stop, and you're not going to be able to push it all the way. And that's good. You want there to be a ton of resistance, because if there is not enough, odds are this might not clamp enough, and you're going to this thing's going to fall out of here. If that's the case, if you could really easily put your PTFE tube through this block, I suggest you reprint it with a horizontal expansion 0.01, and that's going to give you a little bit more tension inside of this block. But essentially that's how it's going to sit. As you can see, I have it flush, and then I'm going to take a sharp razor blade and I'm going to I'm going to trim away this tube to make this same V shape. First, let me go ahead and slide on the nut. We're going to need that on there, like that. Let's put this back in. Get it flat with that V, just like that. And now we can go ahead and tighten this. Now, keep in mind, this thing is printed. It's not the strongest of all things in the world. So you don't want to just crank away at it like crazy, but you do need this to be reasonably tight. And so therefore, I'm going to take this adjustable wrench, I'm going to give it a couple cranks until it's clearly tight. Like I can feel that that's pretty good right there. There you go. And now let's do a test. I'm going to grab it, try to spin it out, see if it moves at all. It does not. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to give it one more little crank. There you go. That is installed. Now let me grab a razor. I have an X-Acto right here off to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go down like this, go back and forth and back and forth. Be careful not to cut yourself. That's one side. And follow the grooves. There you go. And the better job you do here, the easier it is going to be to load in filament. So take your time. There you go, nice and clean. So if you can tell here, the tube is now flush with this V. So when the filament goes in there, it goes right from the gear directly into the tube and nowhere else. Alright, so this is ready to install. One other thing to note is the stock block here has a little spot that holds your cable. One way I do this is I put the PTFE tube underneath the cable one time, just like this. So as you can see, this cable now sits on top of the PTFE tube like that, and now it will no longer drag on your prints. Super simple, don't need clips. I also see a lot of people putting these two together and tying them up just like they did stock, but you don't want that. You don't want this thing tugging on your PTFE tube in any way. So just it being right here is perfect. Alright, so let's put the stepper back up and let's start dropping in these stock screws so we can have this thing attached again. Alright, so here goes the first one. There it is. So the first one you want to do kind of loose so that you can align these things. Here we go. There we go. Now it's threading. Alright, and then I'm going to do the little one with the taper on it. There we go. Now the second screw is going to align the stepper and everything that I need. Okay, and now we can begin to actually tighten these. You don't want to over tighten it. It is plastic. but it's got to be fairly tight. Alright, and this should be the last one that holds the block on. Here we go. Alright, our block is installed. Now it's time to throw the lever on. So the lever on the stock one pivots on this nice little bolt that doesn't have threads through it. Very nice bolt. You could actually drill through this pivot point and reuse this. You're more than welcome to, but I find that it works all the same with just a standard M3. We got the spring perch and the stock spring back in. I'm going to put that on that little nub first, kind of push and compress it a bit just so we can drop this this pivot bolt in. There we go. Let's see if we can get that threaded. I'm kind of standing in an awkward spot to try to get you guys a view for the camera at the same time. So this threaded rod is directly in my way. That's okay, we'll get through it. There we go. Okay, and of course I dropped the spring and the perch. So lesson here, get yourself a comfortable position so that you can install this without any problems. Alright, I think that's finally in. Alright, now I can feel it threading. Here we go. Alright, just a couple more here. Once again, you can kind of see what the tension is like, and it has plenty of tension stock, but you might want to give this bolt just a little bit of crank just so it's nice and tight. Let's see, I'm trying to remove that play and basically tightening this lever down until we remove this up and down play. There it is, you can feel it now. There we go. So that should be nice and tight. Last thing, little tiny PTFE piece. You can get yourself some extra tube. It's extremely cheap. While you're getting yourself some hardware, grab some PTFE tube, and this is optional, but it's going to be a great improvement. Basically, this piece you can put right into the lever, just like this. What this ends up doing is it eliminates the need for any kind of filament guide, for any kind of bearings or more weight or hardware attached in any way. Basically, you put your filament into here, it'll kind of tilt up like this, and your spool can be pretty much anywhere, and now no plastic is grinding anywhere on any of these pieces. So if you push down on this lever here, you can kind of see how tight everything is in here, how there's no place for any kind of extra movement. So when you do put your filament through, it's going to go right into the gears and directly into your printer. Okay? Alright guys, I'm gonna put it back down, load up some filament, get it hot, and show you how it's running. Let's see. Alright everybody, as you can see behind me, the Aquila is back up and running, zero issues. Because this uses the same gears, the same bearings, there is no need to recalibrate your steps. There's no adjustments needed, just the tension, and you're ready to go. So there you go, another option for you guys for your extruders. You can always get a metal one from Creality. You can always buy a dual gear extruder. That will require some E-step calibration and firmware, a custom firmware or modified certified Creality firmware for the dual gear, but they are really good extruders, and I do recommend them a lot, especially if you guys don't want to print your own. But there you go, mine's set up, it's printing perfectly. Hopefully this one has last as long as all the other setups that are rocking it. Hop on my Thingiverse, grab yourself some files, print one, throw it in the bin, or print one and install it now that you know how to install it and the hardware that you need. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you know somebody who will find this useful, share the video with them, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.